The following is a production of Stevenson Media. Want to tip the host? Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description. Get a free Houston Sports State of the Union podcast t-shirt with a donation of $50 or more.
This is the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, the president of Houston Sports Nation, Nick Stevenson.
All right, thank you. Please be seated. My fellow Houstonians, welcome to this Houston Sports State of the Union address for the week of June the 9th. I am the self-appointed president of Houston Sports Nation, Nick Stevenson. As always, there are 1,000 different things you could be doing this evening, but you chose to spend a little bit of time with me, and I appreciate that. There hasn't been a whole lot going on as far as Houston sports news. The dog days of summer are still here, but I did have an opportunity to interview Lachard Binkley, that is at Binkley Hoops, on X, or the app formerly known as Twitter. We discussed the Houston Rockets' upcoming draft, trade rumors, a little Rockets history as well. I had a great conversation with him. I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. The Astros are so mediocre, it hurts. They win 3, they lose 3. They win 2, they lose 2. Can we get a win streak, please? That's all I'm asking for. I did some trades on MLB The Show that you might find really interesting. Maybe the Astros could pull it off themselves. Also, we're going to talk about Caitlin Clark being left off the women's Olympic basketball team. Many are calling it disrespect. I disagree, and I'll tell you why. There's a little bit of hypocrisy there. Also, we need football bad. All I've been doing is watching hype videos from voluntary OTAs, and it's not cutting it. Speaking of football, the old Roughnecks are in the UFL championship. And yeah, as a Houston sports fan, I'm pissed off about it. And I'm going to let you know. So we'll talk about that and more. I would love to give away some free swag on today's show. If you guys want a Houston Sports State of the Union podcast t-shirt, let's do some Houston trivia. You guys will have an opportunity to call in later. Before we get started, though, I want to remind you of the ways that you can support the show. One of them you're doing already. You're watching, you're listening, hopefully you're sharing with your friends. Please remember to like, follow, subscribe wherever you consume the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast. The live stream is available on Facebook, on X. It is available on YouTube, Twitch, and Kick. Any of those places, please subscribe, like the videos. I'd really appreciate that support. And if you're sharing with your friends, then I appreciate that as well. Also, if you'd like to win a Houston Sports State of the Union podcast t-shirt with a little donation, right here you've got a QR code if you're watching the video, and the link, there is a link in the description if you're listening to my tip jar. Anything you leave the show will go directly back into bringing you guys more content. If you leave a donation of $50 or more, I will send you a Houston Sports State of the Union podcast t-shirt. Also, there's affiliate links in the description of this video for both Houston Sports fan gear and the podcast equipment that I use to bring you this show. If you guys were to purchase either the Houston Sports fan gear or any of the podcast equipment that I use, I'll get a little bit of change from that as well. So those are the ways you can support the show monetarily or just by listening. However you choose to support the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast, I really, really do appreciate it. And I do still have some availability for sponsorship spots. If you guys are interested in that, please email me at hsstateoftheunionpod@gmail.com. Okay. I had some technical difficulties earlier, so those of you who stuck with me through it, I really do appreciate it. I honestly don't know what happened, and I hope it doesn't happen again, because I might not be able to get you to come back a third time. But since you're here, let's do what you came here to do, and let's talk about the state of Houston sports, starting with the state of the Houston Rockets. Okay, really quick before I share with you guys my interview with Lachard Binkley, I just want to let you guys know, and many of you already do know, I've been trying to grow this show, grow the audience, and I've shared with many of you that my ultimate goal is to become a credentialed media member so that I can cover our Houston sports teams and bring you as much inside information as possible. So I'm trying to ingratiate myself with members of the sports media. And the first shot I took was reaching out to Lachard Binkley on X, the app formerly known as Twitter. Now, I got to let you guys know, when I originally messaged him on X, I was fully expecting him to not respond, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? Well, to my surprise, he responded very quickly. I asked him if he would like to come on the show, talk about the Rockets. I let him know I do a Houston sports podcast and I have a Rockets segment. I really enjoy his Rockets content, and he agreed to come on. Now, unfortunately, he couldn't be here with me live, but we did record our interview, and I want to share that with you guys now. Enjoy. Okay, Houston Sports Nation, I am the self-appointed president of Houston Sports, Nick Stevenson, and I'm joined by a very special guest, Lachard Binkley of the Dream Shake blog. He is also a credentialed Houston sports reporter, covers the Houston Rockets and the Rio Grande Valley Vipers, national writer for SBNation, and the host of the Rocket Fuel podcast, where you can find anywhere you listen to podcasts. Lachard, I said this when we were introducing ourselves. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, man. Helping out the little guy. We just went through your bio. I hope I didn't mess any of it up. I hope I got it all right. But thank you so much for taking the time to do this, man.
No, absolutely. No, you got it all right. And like I was telling you earlier, man, it's always good to help each other out. You said a little guy, but honestly, we're all in the same boat. I mean, we're all trying to, promote the, Houston sports and get the Rockets out there.
Absolutely.
Because, the national media is not going to do it. Being Houstonians, we know
Yes.
this. We've known this all our life. So,
100%.
yeah, man, it's good to be on the show. And, talk Rockets. I can always talk Rockets, no matter what time of year it is.
For sure. We got to get more Rockets fans in Toyota Center whenever Dallas and the Warriors come visit. I'm tired of seeing a bunch of other jerseys in our building. And that's one of the reasons I started this. Is one of the reasons I try to keep the language kid friendly, because I'm hoping, when I was a kid, I used to listen to sports talk with my dad while we were riding around in his truck. And if I can bring that back for a young father who's got a young son or a young daughter, I love it, man. So, yeah, let's get more Houston fans in the building when we're playing some of these other teams. So, speaking of that, I wanted to get a little background on yourself before we get into this discussion. You are from Houston, born and raised?
Yep. Born and raised.
Okay,
in Houston.
You may ask what part?
Missouri City, Mo City.
Mo City. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And so you've been a Rockets fan for how long?
Oh, entire life. I remember watching games back in the day on my dad's wood grain television.
Yes, sir.
Sit there and watch on Channel 20, Channel 39 back in the day when it was on free television.
Oh, yes.
I was still kind of young in the 80s, but
That was the HSN days,
remember
right?
the Ralph Sampson, early Akeem. Actually, at the time, it was Akeem with the A days,
Right.
when they were going to the finals. And then, of course, the 90s, that was the golden age of Rockets basketball.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, man, I'm a lifelong Houstonian, lifelong Houston Rockets fan, which kind of sometimes is a problem when I'm on press row, because when you're on press row, you can't cheer, you can't do anything.
Right,
so
right.
That took some getting used to, but yeah, man, definitely a lifelong Houstonian.
Awesome. This may be a layup, but who's your favorite Rockets player growing up?
Oh, it's Akeem. I named my dog after him as well.
Nice.
His name's Akeem. So it's Akeem.
Awesome.
It's not even
man.
close. Yeah.
Well, yeah, man. So we have that in common, and I appreciate, man. I'm really trying to tap into the true diehard Houston Rockets fans. And when I call myself the president, I'm not putting myself above you. I'm representing you guys and one of you. So I really do appreciate that. So, it's been a difficult past few years for Houston Rockets fans, man, but we're starting to get a little bit of excitement, a little bit of optimism around the team. I want to talk about this upcoming draft and a lot of the trade rumors surrounding. The first thing I want to ask you is, before the lottery, when it looked like the Rockets or the Nets pick would be around 9, I want to know what your thoughts were about what they should do with that pick. And then once they ended up with 3, did your ideas change?
So I ain't gonna lie, when they were projected to be 9, usually every year I'm doing this deep draft prep and getting ready and going through the players, because during the season, we don't have a lot of time to follow college basketball as much as some of the draft people. So,
Right.
But this year, honestly, when I saw they were at 9, I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna get that deep into it.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they jumped to number 3 again, another top 4 pick, and that's when everything changed. But as far as the way I looked at it, it really hasn't changed too much. At 9, I wanted them to trade that pick, and at 3, I'm a little bit more hesitant as far as them trading that pick. But honestly, the way the Rockets are structured right now, having all these young players they've had over the last 3 years, like you mentioned, with them struggling the last few years, that means that they've had a lot of high draft picks.
Right.
So you already got a lot of players you're going to have to try to continue to implement into your lineup and get minutes for. Remember last year, Tari Eason didn't even play, and the Rockets were already struggling to get minutes for players, especially their younger guys like Cam Whitmore and Amin Thompson. So Now you bring Tari Eason back into the fold, so that's even less minutes. And now you're talking about bringing in another 19, 20-year-old player in a draft that's not even one of the stronger drafts. At least that's what is projected not to be one of the stronger drafts.
Right.
I just see the Rockets, if you're in the mode now where you're trying to get over that hump from going from a surprise, feel-good story type team to an actual competitive team, I think that you have to make a move and trade that pick. You don't have to go get a superstar, but just, the little bit that I do know about M.A. and Rafael, and especially Tillman, at what point he is right now with them, he wanted them to actually, be a winning franchise.
Right.
I just don't see them drafting another young guy and then trying to implement them into a team that already has, the, quote unquote core 6 players that they're trying to get in,
right.
Playing time right now.
Right. And you know what? I'm so glad that you brought up Rafael Stone, Ime Udoka, and the Tillman or the Fertitta family, because I wanted to ask you, it feels like, last year, whenever he was asked the question, Rafael Stone would say things like, wins and losses, that's not really what matters right now. And I thought to myself, there's no way in the world he's saying that unless he's gone by and asked Tillman Fertitta about that first. He's got to be mimicking what he's been told. So last season, and I agreed, I wanted to see improvement, but now that they won 41 games, they barely missed the play-in. Now I think expectation is at a point where I know Rafael just got a contract extension, but he probably shouldn't feel maybe as comfortable as he felt last year. And this is just my opinion, but I want to know on your opinion. As far as Rafael Stone is, would you agree that this is probably one of those make or break moments in at least his career as Rockets GM? It feels like a really critical, like what they do in the next month or so could determine how the rest of his career goes. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, because they're at a turning point. You're talking about, you're coming up real fast on Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun, having to figure out whether you're going to give them a max contract or what type of deal you're going to give them. You have a little bit more time where they're still on their rookie deals, where they're still going to be restricted free agents. But at some point, you're going to have to figure out, hey, am I going to give these guys a max contract? Or am I going to ride it out and then see if, we're going to get the same Jalen Green we got in March, or we're going to get that Jalen Green to actually start a season for the first time in his career? Right. So it's a lot of decisions he has to make. Do I want to go trade for Mikal Bridges and give up my number 3 pick and a Dylan Brooks? And I'm sure Brooklyn's going to be asking for future draft picks. Or do I want to stay pat and just, still draft a player at number 3, like possibly a Klingon or a player like that? It's a real, like you said, make or break decision for him. It does help that he did get that extension, because I do think that Tillman does like what Rafael has done. Yep. He is factoring in that what he came into was a complete hot mess, that Daryl Morey left him when he walked out the door, when he quote unquote retired and then unretired.
Right.
So I think he does have confidence in Rafael, but this decisions he's going to make this year is going to really affect how they going forward, because like I said, you have Fred VanVleet, who this is the last year of his guarantee deal, so they don't even have to bring him back after this next season, and it won't cost against their cap. So they got a lot of decisions to make. And I know people don't want to hear this, but the team you see now is not the team you're going to see in 2 or 3 years. So I know people get attached to the younger guys and the Tari Easons and the Jabari Smiths. And I'm not saying they should trade any of them, but we've been watching basketball for a long time. The team we're watching now, like back in the day, the team we were watching before the Rockets became champions wasn't necessarily the team that was around when they were winning championships in 94 and 95. Right. So you're going to see changes coming up. It's just a matter of, do they have enough confidence in Jalen Green to not put him as part of that trade? I don't see them necessarily trading Alperen Sengun, but I can't say that's not a possibility, because I think that Ime is not really tied to any of these players outside of possibly the ones that he had a hand in drafting, like Amen and Cam. He wasn't here for Jalen. He wasn't here for Jabari. He wasn't here for Alperen. So Ime has a certain type of player that he likes. And if he doesn't see that from those players, we may see a totally different team, as soon as next year.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%, man. And I think because of the amount of money that these players are making, you may agree with this. I think teams were more patient with their rosters maybe 10, 15 years ago before the money got crazy. You used to see teams like Detroit Pistons. They would develop year after year after year and keep guys together. Now it seems like 3 years is the max. They'll keep a core together. And if they're not making any noise in the league in those 3 years, then something changes. So that's why I think this is a really critical year. You brought up for Jalen Green, for Alperen Şengün, not only because of their contract situation, but are they our future? You know, and that's what also, look, I don't envy Rafael Stone at all with all of these decisions he has to make, man. I mean, he's making a pretty penny to do it, but you know, there's a lot riding on the decisions that he makes in the next couple of months. You brought up the Mikal Bridges deal, and you said that you wanted them to move the pick, even whether it was 9 or 3. Is that the deal that you most like that's been talked about, or are there some other deals out there that you've heard? I
mean, that's one I most like. I don't like Donovan Mitchell deal. I just don't think he fits with this team. Not to say that he's not a great player. He's a top 20 player. It's probably about the highest I can put him, but I just don't think he fits for this team. He's not a really great defender. He's not really a point guard. He's more of an undersized shooting guard who's really good on the offensive end. But again, does he fit in what MA wants? We saw his name floating around. Of course, I mean, the main name has been Mikal Bridges that's been floating around. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more as we get closer to the draft, as far as some other players possibly getting moved. But as far as anybody else that's been talked about, I don't really see the Rockets kind of getting into. We saw some people talking about Trae Young getting traded or players like that.
LaMelo Ball.
I don't see. Yeah, exactly. I don't see any of these players that they're like, okay, yeah, that's the person we got to bring in. I even seen some people talk about Karl Anthony Towns possibly getting traded. And I don't really see him as a fit on this current Rockets team. So really, I mean, if we're being perfectly honest, Mikal Bridges is the perfect fit for this team. It's just he's not the perfect fit if you have to give up, let's say, Jalen Green and multiple draft picks. I'm not doing that type of trade.
Absolutely not.
I mean, if you're giving up one player like a Dillon Brooks and number 3, I mean, to me, that's the type of trade you're looking for. But I'm not giving up multiple picks for Mikal Bridges because Mikal Bridges is a really good 3-and-D type of player. Sometimes he's had really good offensive game, but he's not a superstar player.
Right.
So Rockets control Brooklyn's picks for the next few seasons. And Brooklyn, I don't see any path where they're going to become some juggernaut team or some team that's going to be competing for playoff spots. So the next draft is supposed to be a lot better draft. So if you're the Rockets, why would you give up next season's pick or the season after that when you have much better players coming down the pipeline in the draft? So
the big one is Cooper Flagg next in 2025, and we have I believe we have a pick swap with the Nets. So the question, here's my thing: if they keep Mikal Bridges, I don't think they're going to bottom out. I think they'll be average. So that pick may not be that pick may be around the same place it was this season, and you can't count on the ping pong balls to go your way the way they did this year. So no, I agree with you 100%. You talked about Ime Udoka and guys that are his type of guys. I saw a trade rumor out there to bring in from Memphis. I don't know. This happens to me all the time. Now I'm blanking on his name. Marcus Smart. How do you feel about the Marcus Smart deal? I don't know if you saw that.
So
for that one, it was Jock Landale and Tate, and I think
it was a number 3.
The number 3 pick.
It was one of their draft picks.
I think it was the number 3. That.
Yeah, he's definitely one of MA type of players. It's just a matter of where would he fit. Is he willing to come off the bench? Because he's not going to be starting. He's not starting over Fred VanVleet. He's not starting over Jalen Green.
Right.
If Dillon Brooks is still here, he's not starting over Dillon Brooks. So he would have to be willing to come off the bench. I mean, coming off the bench, he'd be great coming off the bench. I mean, that's the type of player. that's Patrick Beverley 2.0.
Right.
And actually, if you really look at it, Marcus Smart is a better player than Patrick Beverley ever was. Nothing against
100%.
Patrick Beverley, but
100%.
Marcus Smart is
Marcus Smart's actually a really good distributor. To me, what would be lacking with that deal is, to me, the Rockets' number 1 need, and that's shooting. 100%. Yes. I mean, I know he's made some clutch shots in his career, but I don't think anybody considers him a great shooter. But I was curious what you thought about that. And We talked about, I saw LaMelo Ball. I never heard the Trae Young one, but that's interesting. I just don't see those guys being Ime Udoka guys.
Yeah, especially not Trae Young, because he's a traffic cone on defense,
Right.
and that absolutely runs. The few times I've talked to him, that absolutely is the one thing that runs him crazy. He doesn't even care if you go 5 for 20 from the field, but if you're going out there and you're getting blown by on defense every
Right.
time, or you're not getting back. I mean, that's why we saw a lot of times Jalen Green on the bench. It wasn't because of his offense. It's because he wasn't putting the effort in on the defensive end. So that's why a lot of times he wasn't playing the fourth quarter. And even with Alperen Sengun, wasn't necessarily effort, because I think Sengun's not the type of player that's not going to go out there and not give the effort. But if he's missing assignments or he's not doing what Ime wants him to do on that defensive end, that's a quick way to get you on the bench. So, yeah, Trae Young doesn't really fit what the Rockets want to do. So, again, I know people are used to when Silas was here, he had pretty much no say in the roster construction, but it's not like that for Ime. I don't know how much say he has, but he definitely has some say on who they draft and who they bring in as far as trades or free agency.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with that more. I want to talk to you about some more guys. This is a pretty important season in my estimation, for Tari Eason and Jabari Smith Jr. What do you think we need to see from them for them to show like they can be a part of the core of a winning basketball team?
I mean, for Jabari, and it's the same thing for Jalen, it's consistency. I mean, sometimes Jabari will go out there and give you 20 and 10, playing great defense, and then other games he'll go out there and you don't even know he's on the court.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's something he even kind of acknowledged, as far as he's not where he wanted to be in season 3 when he was talking to Jason Tatum over at the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for him, it's consistency, and it's definitely being able to knock down an outside shot, because that's one of the things that everybody was talking about when in the draft was, oh man, he's a stretch 4. He's going to help spread the floor out for the Rockets, and we haven't really seen that yet from Jabari Smith. He definitely improved last year in rebound, and I'll give him that. That was probably his most improvement in any area, was the fact that he was a much better rebounder. But at times he still struggles with his handle. He still struggles shooting from the outside. As far as on the defensive end, I really haven't seen the switchability that we thought we would see him when he was over in Auburn. We haven't really seen that as much in the NBA. Of course, the NBA is a whole different animal as far as trying to go out there and guard Kyrie Irving compared to. But no,
you're 100% right. It was that and his ability to shoot that had most people thinking he was going to go number 1, or at least I don't know if that was just smoke and mirrors, but he was in the conversation to go number 1 because of those two things. And you're right, it hasn't really fully come to fruition. We've seen flashes of it, but it hasn't been, like you said, a consistent thing. What about Tari Eason? I know injury has been his real big issue, but talk about how critical it's going to be for him to have a good season.
One thing you can never worry about with Tari Eason is effort on either side of the ball. He's going to give you 100% effort, and a lot of times that's why before he got hurt, a lot of people were like, man, he should be starting ahead of Jabari Smith, because he's going to always give you the effort.
Right.
He's a better defender, and something that shocked everybody in his rookie year, if I'm not mistaken, he was either first or second on the team in 3-point percentage. So nobody saw that coming for him coming out of LSU. I mean, everybody knew about his defense and his hustle and the effort he gave on both sides of the court, but nobody saw him being one of the better shooters on the team.
Right.
And the team kind of is just bad overall shooting, so that doesn't say a lot. But still, the fact that he was shooting 36-37% as a rookie, I mean, that really stood out. He's already a better shooter than Jabari has been so far in his career, and I don't think anybody saw that coming. So for Tari, it's really just, if he can stay healthy and stay on the court, he's definitely going to be in the rotation. At times, he's going to finish games. If Jabari is struggling, or if, Dylan's in foul trouble, or whatever the case is, he's going to finish games, because, I mean, I hate to keep bringing it up, but the Ime's type of player, I mean, it's Tari Eason. I mean, that's the definition of a Ime type player. It's somebody just like him that wasn't necessarily, highly rated, top 5 guy coming into the draft. Not a lot of people may have thought of, but plays hard every single play, is a really good defender, and does all the small things on the court that not everybody does. I mean, that's the definition of what Ime likes to see on the court.
100%. 100%.
If Jabari doesn't pick it up, I wouldn't be shocked if Tari really starts to eat into his minutes at that power forward position.
I'm a huge Tari Eason fan. I like that you can play him at the 3 and the 4. It's all about health with him, man. And that's the only hang up. And I agree with you 100%. He definitely could eat up some of those Jabari minutes. We just need him stay on the court. Yeah. Is there anybody on this team? You brought Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. Is there anybody on the team that you feel like, I mean, nobody's untouchable, but if their name came up in a deal, you would say no way?
I honestly, there's nobody I can say that, oh man, there's no way you can trade that guy, because yes, you were 41-41, but at the end of the day, you weren't a top 10 team in the West, and the West is just going to get tougher. I mean, not like it's going to get easier out West. So there's nobody on the team. And then you've been one of the worst teams the last several seasons. There's just no way in the world you could say there's nobody. There's not an Ant Edwards on this team. There's not a Luka Doncic. There's not any of those type of players on the Rockets. Not to say that, one of these players won't turn into a star level player. Yes. I mean, I guess if you're ranking them in order of people that I wouldn't get rid of, I mean, of course, Alperen Sengun would be the least likely person I would get rid of. And then you kind of work your way up from there. But it's not anybody where I'll be like, okay, there's no way I'm trading this guy. Yeah. It's just the Rockets aren't a good enough team to really say that. And even with Alperen Sengun, as much as I like Sengun, if you're, let's say, somebody's offering you a top 10 player and you have to give up Alperen Sengun to do it, then, but I'll say this. That's not the key, right? Picking up the phone offering Alperen Sengun to anybody.
That's the key. It depends on who you're getting in return.
Exactly.
And that's kind of how I feel about it. And that's why nobody's untouchable in the NBA. Obviously, if Minnesota called and said, hey, we'll give you Ant Edwards for Cam Whitmore, you do that in a heartbeat. But they're not making that phone call, Yeah. So am I going to trade Cam Whitmore for somebody like LaMelo Ball? Probably not, because of injury history, and I think there's like I said, nobody's untouchable. It just depends on what else is the ask, what else is coming into it. But speaking of Cam Whitmore and Amen Thompson, what are your expectations for them this season? How do you see them developing in their second year?
So, I mean, if you look at it the way they played last season, Cam Whitmore seems to have a lot higher to go just because of his overall skill set. I think Amen Thompson is a little bit ahead as far as his overall game, except for of course, we know his outside shooting is something that's going to really be the determining factor for Amen Thompson. Is he going to be a 19% three-point shooter who never shoots threes, who literally will not shoot a three-pointer, a la Rajon Rondo back in the day? Or is he going to at least be a serviceable three-point shooter who, can occasionally knock down a shot? Because if he's not going to take threes at all, that's really going to limit him. And ultimately, that's going to push him out of being a point guard. Right. Because, even though he has the height, he has the passing ability, he still has to work on, cutting down the turnovers. But he has the point guard skills. If you can't make an outside shot as a point guard, that's going to really limit what you can do on the court. And that's really going to push him more to being a small forward and a power forward. So it's really that's the number one thing for him. It doesn't even have to be a three-pointer necessary for Amen. It can be a mid-range shot, because teams, as you saw last year, teams didn't even guard him. Yeah. They literally would put their center on him because they knew that he liked to operate in the dunker spot. So they would put their big man on him, and they know that he couldn't hit from the outside, so they didn't have to worry about going out there and guard him out there. So I do think he can improve that. Will he ever be even a Fred VanVleet level three-point shooter? I guess you can never say never, but I don't see that as a possibility for him. But he can at least be serviceable. 33% from three, I think, would be something 100. That he needs to shoot for.
I think the form looks good. It was a little funky when he, came out in the draft, but I think the form looks better. For me, it's I don't know what makes the difference. I don't know if it's practice. Like, how do you determine if you are a Russell Westbrook who just can't shoot and never could and never will, or Jason Kidd wasn't a great three-point shooter early in his career, but he developed where he could knock down the open shot. So I guess at that point, you're counting on your trainers, you're counting on your coaches to coach them up. And, in that sense, I am really comfortable. I feel like this coaching staff and the Rockets finally got a front office combination with a coaching staff that is going to develop these players. Jalen Green just got to do it from the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
I have really high hopes for him this season. I think he can, if he reaches his full potential, he can be in that Anthony Edwards, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander conversation 100%. He's just got to do it. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to this next month, man, to see if we make the pick. If we do end up making the pick, right now, a lot of people have us mocked either Donovan Clingan or Reed Shepherd. Do you think Donovan Clingan can play without P?
I mean, he can, but for me, it's you have to look at what you need. Right now, funny enough, center is not really a position of need. Not to say that he wouldn't be an improvement over Jock Landale, but you got Steven Adams. I think people kind of forget that Steven Adams will be on the roster next year because he was hurt all last year. But you have Steven Adams. Jock Landale showed that he actually could be a serviceable backup, and now you have him as a third center. So you bring in Donovan Clingan, you're going to have to get rid of one of them because having four centers, I don't think Boban's probably back next season, so I don't think you're going to have four centers next year. That doesn't really make much sense. So it's like, do you really want to add to a position of actual where you actually have depth, which is kind of rare on this team? As far as Reed Shepherd, he's one of those guys that can be really good player, a JJ Redick type player, or maybe he's a Jimmy Fredette. Like, we don't really know. He can be anywhere in between with those players. And surprisingly, he's actually a really good defender. He's he's athletic. It's just a matter of, with his size, will he be able to defend in the NBA? Will he be able to get to the basket? We know he's a great shooter, something the Rockets absolutely need. But is that good enough to draft at number 3? If let's say Sarr falls to number 3, I absolutely take Sarr. I mean, even though he's 100%. Not a great shooter, he is a good to great defender that can possibly turn into a decent shooter. And he's somebody that I think can play alongside Alperen Sengun. And another thing that Rafael said during the press conference when he was talking to the media, he was telling us that if we do make the pick, it's not necessarily for somebody that's going to come in and start or come in and play major minutes. We have no problems, as we know, sending them down to the Rio Grande Valley Vipers and play for them for a while. But again, it's, do you want to, to draft this week, but do you want to take your number 3 pick, which is still a high pick, and do you want to take it on a player like a Reed Shepherd, who he does feel a need as far as a shooter, but where do you get those minutes from? That's what it comes down to. I know people were saying Aaron Holiday minutes, but Aaron Holiday was only getting those minutes because of injury. He's not. If Tari Eason is there and Fred VanVleet is playing and Jalen Green's there and Cam Whitmore is there, where are you going to get Reed Shepherd minutes? That's the thing with me, is you're going to have to, if you make a trade, it's one thing, but if you stay pat and then draft a player, that player is probably going to be playing a lot of time in the G League. Let's just be honest.
100%. And I think that's why you, me, and I think a lot of Rockets fans really hope we can find a way to move that pick for somebody who impacts winning right now. I agree with you. The Mikal Bridges, it's all about time and circumstance, right? You know, Mikal Bridges is not worth a number 3 pick if the Portland Trailblazers are sitting at number 3. But for the Houston Rockets, where they are in their stage, you know, they're supposed to be in their phase 2 of winning now. I would have a hard time. I would give up the 3rd. I would give up Dylan Brooks. I would have a hard time giving up 2 more firsts, but maybe get rid of that pick swap for 2025. And then I think I could work with that. As far as if that happened as a fan, I wouldn't feel like we gave up too much, because Mikal Bridges is going to impact winning on both sides of the ball immediately. So he brings you everything that you need, shooting and defense, can distribute a little bit. I mean, obviously that's not his strong suit, but that's
never misses games as well. He hasn't missed a game since, I remember writing an article on him. He hasn't missed a game since high school, and that was just because he was deathly sick and he couldn't play in like one of the championship games or something like that, something crazy. So he hasn't missed a game since high school.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
College. He has played hasn't missed a game in the NBA. So it's like, that's the definition of an Iron Man. It kind of reminds me of Otis Thorpe back in that day. Just never missed a game.
Absolutely. Well, man, let's talk a little old school Rockets too, man, real quick. Before I let you go, man. Rudy T just won the Chuck Daly Lifetime Achievement Award. I actually read your guys' article on that. What are your fondest memories of him as the Houston Rockets coach, and where do you think he is in the pantheon of all-time coaches?
So it's a funny story. It kind of reminded me. I kind of thought about it when you were bringing up about getting more fans in the Toyota Center back in the day, the Summit. Rudy T had this comment. He said that one of the things he wanted to do when he took over as coach was he used to walk around Houston and see all different types of jerseys, Jordan jerseys, and Isaiah Thomas, whoever, just back in the day. You never really saw Rockets jersey, and that's one of the things he wanted to do was bring pride back to Houston and get people started wearing Rockets gear. And of course, we know they won those 2 championships, and that's something I always thought about because Rudy T, his whole professional career was Houston. He played for the Rockets. He was assistant coach for the Rockets. And then, of course, he became head coach. So, I mean, he wasn't born in Houston, but, he got here as fast as he could. I don't like what the saying is. So, the fact that he had that much pride in the Rockets and trying to bring that to the city of Houston, I mean, I always remembered that. And I always just kind of remember, him coming into a really difficult situation, not to get too long-winded because I can talk about the old school Rockets for a long time. But he came in right after they fired Don Chaney, who had just won Coach of the Year the year prior, and the Rockets kind of struggled that following year. He came in, he didn't even really – he was surprised that they gave him the job. They kind of called him in the office and say, hey, you want to take the job? And he was like, yeah, I mean, I guess. So he kind of just took the job kind of, out of nowhere. And I don't even know if they planned on keeping him long-term, but he came in and all the players liked him. And, that's kind of the thing that's kind of stood out by Rudy. He's always been a player's coach. And I haven't heard one player ever say anything bad about Rudy Tomjanovich, in the times I've been following the Rockets. So that's definitely something that's always, stood out to me. As far as his ranking, as far as all-time coaches, I mean, to me, you went back-to-back championships. That got to put you in the top 10, top 15 all-time in coaches. I mean, and you got to think about it. I know people always bring up Jordan wasn't playing, even though he did play in 95.
I'm glad you brought it up. Thank you.
I mean,
we actually beat the team that beat him, swept him. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's always crazy people bring that up because Jordan, well, he was there in the next season. He just wasn't good enough to get to the finals. But anyway, that he definitely got to be in the top 10, top 15 because I mean, how many back-to-back champions have we had? Just think about how hard that is. How many have we had in the last 20 years? Maybe one, the Lakers. I can't think of the last back-to-back champion. Well, I guess Golden State. I guess they won. Even though they shouldn't have, but that's another story. But so I would say top 10, top 15, man. You went back-to-back championships and you have that much success. I mean,
I don't disagree with that at all. And you think about his contributions to USA basketball. And a lot of people forget he didn't coach. He did. Oh, as a player also. Yeah, he's a Hall of Fame player and coach. But he was in the front office for the Lakers when they were making their second run with Kobe and Powell. So
doing a lot of scouting.
Yeah. So I mean, I obviously he's a Houston hero. Completely deserves everything that comes to him, including this Lifetime Achievement Award. Not surprised at all. I'm glad that it was a Dallas coach who had to give him the award too. I was just talking about the Dallas-Houston beef in my last show. Rudy T says that he thinks Robert Horry should be a Hall of Famer. What are your thoughts?
Man, that's a tough one because I mean, we know where Robert started his career, and honestly, he's one of the early pioneers of the stretch four. I mean, people weren't putting stretch fours in their lineup back then until Rudy T decided to do that. Once they traded Otis Thorpe and Carl Herrera got hurt, they moved him to be the stretch four, and he has the 7 rings and all the big shots. So I mean, if you're factoring in all that, and I know NBA has a lot more lax rules when it comes to putting people in the Hall of Fame.
Very true.
I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that. And he also it's also factoring in college as well. They also add into whether you get to the Hall. It's not the NBA Hall of Fame; it's the Basketball Hall of Fame. So I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with putting Robert Horry in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and are we gonna restrict Hall of Fame in any sport really to just simply numbers? Like, did you score enough points? Did you have enough assists? Or is it your impact? Because nobody can doubt the impact that Robert Horry had on the teams that he played for. And so, I'm a homer. I wouldn't mind seeing him in there either.
Yeah.
But that's just one of those things, man. It's sometimes we become slave to the numbers and the statistics. I was arguing with a buddy of mine who does a podcast in Alaska, actually. We were having conversations about who were all-time greats, and he was telling me people like Paul Pierce and Jason Kidd and Chris Paul are not all-time greats. And I'm like, well, what is your requirement for all-time great? I mean, there's 15 people who've scored more points in the NBA than Paul Pierce. He's a champion. He's a perennial all-star. He's been an all-pro a few times. And I hated that I was making my argument with numbers because I know it's not always just about the numbers, but the numbers do have to matter for something. So Robert Horry is one of those guys. Maybe he doesn't have the numbers, but his impact on his teams, I think he definitely deserves to be in there. Well, one more thing I wanted to ask you, man. I'm so glad we had this conversation, and thank you again for taking the time to do this. And I want to make sure that everybody who listens to my show knows that they can find all of your links, everything to the Dream Shake, your Twitter profile, which is @BinkleyHoops. His link tree is in the description of this video. So you guys go check him out. Check out his content. Support the Rocket Fuel podcast. Great podcast.
Appreciate that.
And I want to make sure that I give you your flowers and your love for that. Let me get your all-time Houston Rockets starting five and then 1 6 man.
So starting five for me is pretty easy. I mean, I would say definitely Calvin Murphy. People sleep on Calvin Murphy all the time. They just think he's some guy that dresses crazy on TV. But Calvin Murphy, for the longest time, held a bunch of Rockets records until James Harden broke them.
Yeah.
He was assist leader for a long time. Hall of Famer, one of the best players back in the 80s that people rarely even talk about. So Calvin Murphy, got to go James Harden, regardless of how he left, regardless of how I felt about him when he left.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still, to me, the second best player in franchise history.
I was just about to ask you that.
Yeah, so you got to go James Harden, and then Rudy T at small forward, because again, people forget how good Rudy T was as a player before that whole Kermit Washington punch thing kind of just changed his entire career. So I'll put Rudy T at small forward. Kind of debating on who to put at power forward and who put at center, but I got to put Akeem at center just because it's Akeem.
Right,
he has to be in the center position. But at my power forward, Moses Malone, because he did win MVPs here in Houston. He wasn't here in Houston a long time, but without Moses Malone, there wouldn't be an Akeem Olajuwon. People need to remember that because he taught Akeem a lot of what he ended up using in the NBA, and he was a big reason why Akeem became the player he became, because all those runs they used to have in the Fondy Center back in the day. And so Moses Malone is, one of the most underrated players in NBA history. So that would definitely be my top five. Man, 6 man, that one was a tougher one. I know people love Tracy McGrady, but for me, McGrady just didn't do enough while he was here. I know there was reasons why he didn't because of injuries and things like that. And I was thinking Yao Ming, but again, injuries kind of, took a lot of his career and kind of kept him from, being exactly who he could have been.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was tough, but I have to probably go Elvin Hayes.
Okay.
Going way back to like when the Rockets first got to Houston.
Way back
he was actually playing for the San Diego Rockets.
Right.
Elvin Hayes, man, he was a great player. If you ever want to go back down a rabbit hole looking at YouTube videos, definitely go check out some of his games. And he could actually be in the starting lineup and flip-flop him and Rudy. You can go either way. But I would say that's probably my 6 players I would go with.
Okay, I got to tell you, man, I gave out my 6 players last week, and I made a bold statement. I said, you may not agree with my starting 5 and my 6 man. Yeah. And if you don't, you're wrong, but that's okay. But I got to say, man, like you bringing in – I had Calvin Murphy and Elvin Hayes are the two, obviously they're older players, man, but you got to respect what they did. I had James Harden playing the point. I had Drexler at 2, McGrady at 3, and then I had Hakeem at 4 just because a little bit more ability to shoot. And then I had Moses Malone playing the center, getting all those rebounds and scoring close to the basket.
They get interchangeable,
yeah, 100%. And my 6 man, this is just fanhood, man. So my 6 man was Yao Ming because he's my second favorite Rocket of all time, and The what ifs with him and the Tracy McGrady era, and honestly, the what ifs with him and Steve Francis as well. I mean, that's one of those things for a Houston Rockets fan. We'll probably ponder over that for years to come. But yeah, I just love talking Rockets hoops, man, and I'm sure you love doing the same. And man, what a dream to be doing that for a living, man. So I'm so extremely grateful for you to come and have this conversation with me. I would love to do it again if you have the time. Like I said, I've been doing this podcast thing for Houston sports just for about 2 months now. But I've been podcasting for a while, so I figured out a few tricks to the trade. If you need help with anything, if there's anything I can do to give back, to pay it forward, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, man. Yeah,
man, absolutely. And same thing. If you ever need help with anything or need me to come on a show, I can definitely always jump on, because I mean it's definitely you can never have too much good sports content, especially in Houston, because I mean we do have some bad content as well. Right. So you can have too much good content.
100%.
Good content creators. So yeah, definitely, man. Anytime.
Well, yeah, man. I think I may have found my Houston Rockets ambassador for Houston Sports Nation and Lachard Binkley, man.
Absolutely, we gotta get you in there, man, because sometimes it's some people we kind of need to move out of the way.
Hey, man, I'm ready. I'm ready. You just let me know. You say the word, brother, and I'm there. It'd be a dream come true, man. But like I said, in this crazy world we're living in, for us to be able to sit down for a few minutes, talk hoops, talk sports. I know there's a lot of really serious things going on in the world, but take a breather from that and to talk Houston sports, man. It's what I love to do, and I want to keep doing it as long as I possibly can. So thank you so much, man, for coming in and doing this, and I hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah, again, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. I had a great time.
Thank you. All right, so that was my conversation with Lachard Binkley. Let me tell you guys something. That man had zero obligation to do what you just saw him do. You go check out his Twitter, and I mean, he said it himself. He's not a celebrity or anything, but he's in there, man. Like, he's in press row. He's interviewing players. He's got an interview that he did with Alperen Şengün up on his Twitter right now. He had no obligation to come do my little podcast. And anytime I bump into people like that, you know that's just genuinely good people. So Lachard, if you're watching now or if you watch later, I appreciate you so much, brother. I hope we get to do it again soon. I'd love to be sitting in press row with you, covering the Houston Rockets and the Houston Texans and the Houston Astros. Would be a dream come true, man. But thank you so much for taking the time to do that. And thank you to everybody who watched that interview. I see a couple of my bros in the chat. I see my good friend Chris Rivers, a.k.a. Buddha. Look, man, on the heels of this conversation that I just had about the Houston Rockets and our all-time top 5, I told you guys during the dog days of summer, eventually we were probably going to have to talk about, would the Houston Rockets have a championship were it not for Jordan retiring for 1 season, not 2 seasons, 1 season. We'll call it a season and a half if you guys want to be fair. But so often everyone forgets that he was in the NBA when the Houston Rockets won their second championship. In fact, we swept the team that beat him in the Eastern Conference Finals. That can't be denied. And to everyone who argues, oh, he wasn't himself, he wasn't Jordan, the man dropped 55 in the Garden. Like, he's Michael Jordan. There's no diet version of Michael Jordan. He retired a second time, came back at age, 38, and dropped 25 in his first game back. Like, this is what I'll say, and I'll get into a little bit more detail about it on a future show. But it's not the Rockets' fault that Jordan wasn't there when they got there. He had every opportunity to get there, and we could have answered this question once and for all. What the 1995 Houston Rockets did was nothing short of incredible. As a 6th seed, going to the NBA Finals, beating 4 60-win teams, having never had home court advantage. And if I'm not mistaken, they were down 3-1 twice in the course of those playoffs. I know they were down 3-1 at least once in their first run, but in their second run, I believe they were down 3-1 twice. just simply incredible. And I'm not going to let anybody take away from what the Houston Rockets did, because the times that they played Michael Jordan, I will remind you guys of this. In that span, I think it was from 91 to 98, the Rockets were 8-1 or 8-2 against the Bulls during the regular season, which is the only time they could play. I don't know if the first Rockets championship team beats the Bulls. I think they could, because you had Vernon Maxwell to guard Jordan. You had Robert Horry, who was a very good defender, to guard Pippen. And I'm sorry, at no point in any time in Bulls history, the entire history of their franchise, did they have anyone who was guarding Hakeem Olajuwon. Bill Cartwright, Bill Winnington, Luke Longley, who was guarding him? Anyway, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to break that down. I'm gonna have to break that down in its full detail soon, because that's one thing that anybody who wants to try to get under my skin, they'll try to bring up, oh, the only reason the Rockets have championships is because Jordan retired. And my man Chris Rivers knows that too. He says, I hope the Dream sends a Christmas card to MJ every year. Bro, Google who Michael Jordan would put on his all-time starting five at the center position. Michael Jordan knows Olajuwon was that dude. Michael Jordan put together his best five players, and he was on it at the shooting guard position, I believe. But he had Hakeem Olajuwon at center. That's over Wilt Chamberlain. That's over Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, over Shaq, over all of the greats that you can think of. And that's why, honestly, in my opinion, I believe that Hakeem Olajuwon is the greatest player to ever play the center position ever. I don't think there's any center that has ever played basketball who would be able to stop Hakeem Olajuwon. And you can call me a homer if you want to. I'll take that. That's fine. But that's just how I feel about it. So, what I'm really excited about is the fact that we are able to talk Houston Rockets hoops and not just be talking about the past, but talk about some optimism for what's going to happen in the next month or so. So any of my Rockets fans who are in the chat, or if you guys end up catching this show later, go ahead and hit me up on the socials and let me know, what do you think the Houston Rockets should do with that number 3 pick? Are you wanting them to trade it? Are you wanting them to keep it? If they're keeping it, who do you want them to take? Donovan Clingan and Reed Shepherd are the two who have been mocked to the Rockets the most. There's some people who think that the Donovan Clingan thing is maybe them just trying to gen up interest for a trade, because they don't really have any room for him on this team, as Lachard brought up when we did that interview. So let's just hope whatever happens. I said it's kind of a make or break decision for our boy Rafael Stone. Hopefully, whatever decision they make, it's the right decision that continues to put us on the path towards getting back to a championship. My boy Chris Rivers says, what if Shaq did get in shape and stay in shape? Think he could give Hakeem the business? If Shaq had stayed in shape, okay, so we could say that when they played each other, Hakeem was in his prime. Shaq was not quite in his prime. This is what I'll say. Thin, agile Shaq, who was super strong, that's the Orlando Shaq that we saw. I don't think he's messing with Hakeem. When Shaq weighed like almost 400 pounds and was just backing everybody down and dunking on them, I don't think Hakeem could do anything with that. But Shaq's also got to play defense on the other end. And the thing that Hakeem Olajuwon could do, not only is he a wizard in the post, but he could take you out on the wing and he could take you off the dribble. Shaq staying in shape is one of those conversations that, like, I'm not going to deny that Shaq had some skill. I think he was mostly power and size, but he had a lot of skill too. I would say he had more skill than like a Dwight Howard. You know, he had touch around the basket. He had a little jump hook. He had that little one-hand bank shot. So he had some skills, man. What I do know is if he stayed in shape, he probably would have won like 7 championships. Because, I mean, once Hakeem was out of the league and all the other centers got old, all you really had left was Kevin Garnett. You had really tall power forwards like Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, Dirk Nowitzki. If Shaq could have stayed in prime shape against those guys, he's killing them. He's killing them. And I think even he would admit as much. But still, Hakeem Olajuwon is still the greatest center ever, just skill-wise. Listen, my argument, Hakeem Olajuwon is in the top 15 of 4 major categories in the NBA, and he's the only player in NBA history to be that. He's top 15 in points, rebounds, blocks, and steals. Look it up, man. Just as an all-around basketball player, I know he doesn't have as many championships as Kareem, as Bill Russell, doesn't have as many MVPs as Kareem. But I think if prime Hakeem Olajuwon played 1-on-1 or just a 5-on-5 game against prime Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Hakeem Olajuwon's giving him that work. He's giving him the business. All right, I love talking Houston Rockets, man. I could do that all day. That's why I'm so thankful to Lachard that he came on the show to talk Houston Rockets, and we will definitely do that again. Real quick, let's talk the state of the Houston Astros. All right, who can help the Astros? It's nobody who's on the roster right now, apparently. Last week, we asked the question, should they be buyers or sellers? And I still had very many of you say the Astros definitely need to be buyers. And my question to you is, okay, who are they buying and what are they giving up? Well, you might be interested to know that today I got on the rock solid, ironclad, 100% accurate MLB The Show and tried a few different trades out. And there was no buying scenario. Like, the Astros don't have anything to offer other than Alex Bregman, Kyle Tucker. Sorry. I say Ryan Presley, Justin Verlander. But if you trade those guys, you're not buying, you're selling. They don't have anything in this farm system that's going to bring them anybody who's going to help pull them out of a 7.5 game deficit in the AL West and a 5.5 game deficit in the wild card. They're just not. And it's unfortunate. But I did try some selling scenarios, and the number one that I came up with out of the many that I want to know how you guys feel about it. According to MLB The Show, I don't know if this is real, but you could trade Kyle Tucker to the Orioles for Jackson Holliday, who's the number one of the top 100 recruits in baseball, and Grayson Rodriguez, 24-year-old pitcher, very good pitcher. He's a starting pitcher, which we're hurting for right now because of injuries. We have like 4 pitchers who just got Tommy John or are recovering from Tommy John. So my question is, would you trade Kyle Tucker for the number one prospect in baseball and Jackson Holliday, who is Matt Holliday's son, and a starting pitcher? Now, the Orioles would probably need you to throw in something like maybe Montero, Presley, maybe Abreu. Probably not Abreu. I'll be honest with you. MLB The Show did that deal for Kyle Tucker and Dubin. They gave me Grayson Rodriguez and Jackson Holliday. Jackson Holliday plays shortstop. He plays third base. He plays a little bit of outfield, maybe like left field. And he's the number one prospect in baseball. Would you trade Kyle Tucker for the number one prospect in baseball? Now, here's the deal. The Baltimore Orioles probably are not making that deal just to catch up on their 2.5 game being 2.5 games behind the Yankees. Or, I mean, Jackson Holiday is probably going to be called up in September. I don't think he's on the club right now. And he's going to be one of the best young players in baseball, and he's going to be cheap. I don't think the Orioles would do that deal, but that's not. We're talking about this from the Astros perspective, because I've heard so many people say you can't get rid of Tucker. I'm not getting rid of Tucker. My boy CJ last week on the show said I'm not getting rid of Tucker. So the question is, would you trade Kyle Tucker for the number one prospect in baseball? Even if you don't think it's Jackson Holiday, whoever you think it is. I think you could get a pretty good haul, something like that deal or something similar for Kyle Tucker at the right team. I don't know if the Orioles are that team, but would the Yankees take a Kyle Tucker for some of their prospects? Would the Dodgers take a Kyle Tucker for some of their prospects? Look, the Yankees were last place in their division last year, did not play well. They had a down year similar to what the Astros are having right now. 1 year later, they make some free agent acquisitions. They do a little bit of selling at the deadline last year. They didn't get rid of their big guns. They didn't get rid of Garrett Cole. They didn't get rid of Judge or anything like that. As a matter of fact, they extended Judge. They kept... There goes the name thing again. I hate when that happens. They kept Mike Stanton, and they added Juan Soto. So the Astros don't have to completely blow this thing up. Maybe you trade Alex Bregman, Ryan Presley, and Justin Verlander. You're probably not going to get a Jackson Holiday back in a deal like that, but maybe you can get a Grayson Rodriguez. Maybe you can get, I don't know, maybe Bregman, Verlander for 2 years, and Presley is enough to get you Jackson Holiday and Grayson Rodriguez. I don't know. I'm not in Baltimore. I don't know how high they are on Jackson Holiday, if they believe he's going to be the next Mike Trout or the next Shohei Ohtani. I don't know. But I'm just done thinking that you absolutely have to keep Tucker. Because I've said this before, if you get rid of Tucker and you get the right pieces, and that's, of course, the caveat, that's the unknown, you can take this window that's maybe 3 to 5 years and you can stretch it out to 10 years, especially if you lose Bregman and some of these other players that aren't in your future plans anyway. But I just want to know from you guys. Obviously, I'm doing this somewhat tongue-in-cheek by using a video game, but I would be curious, if you guys want them to be buyers, what in the world do they have to give in order to be buyers? I just don't see it. I don't see it in their system. I don't see it on the current MLB roster. The only players that you could get something back for, I don't think you would consider that buying. I think you'd consider it selling. So, I don't know. But not a whole lot going on with the Astros, just a lot of mediocrity. Hopefully they will win tonight's game. I think they're still in San Francisco. I'm going to try to get out of here so you guys can check that out. Really quick, not a whole lot going on with the Texans, so we won't have a state of the Texans, other than the fact that, like, can we just get some football? I'm ready for some football, some real football. I wanted to talk really quick about the Caitlin Clark thing, because she was left off the women's Olympic team, and there's a lot of people saying that she's being disrespected. And we've seen a lot of videos in her recent games. She's taking hard fouls. The refs are not giving her the calls that she believes she should be getting. There was a flagrant foul against her recently against the Chicago Sky player. I don't remember her name. I apologize. And it was called a common foul during the game, and then it was upgraded to a flagrant later. And so many people are saying, oh, Caitlin Clark, she's the face of the league. She's the reason these women are going to get paid more. Why wouldn't she be on the Olympic team? It's so disrespectful. And I find that a little bit hypocritical, because the audience that I'm hearing this from, it seems to be the same audience that, probably for the same reason, I'm not a LeBron hater, But I believe the reason so many people dislike LeBron is because he crowned himself. The media crowned him. He literally was calling himself King James, the king, the chosen one, before he ever did a damn thing in the NBA. And if you guys recall, even his own teammates on the Cleveland Cavaliers, once Cleveland knew that they had the number 1 pick and they knew that LeBron James was coming in, even they making comments to the media were like, we don't need this dude. He's not going to come in and make an impact right away. He's going to have to earn his spot. And I don't think he had to deal with hard fouls the way Caitlin Clark has, because he was just a massive individual, as he still is. But even at age 18, he was a big, strong player. But in my opinion, I believe one of the reasons I have less respect for LeBron James is because I think he was crowned. I think he was handed the keys to the Ferrari before he ever earned it. And I know that many of you feel the same way, but somehow you think Caitlin Clark should just be handed everything and be the chosen one and start getting all the foul calls and or have everybody's respect out the gate. That's not how professional sports works. Number one, if you're saying that a lot of these women are salty about the shine that Caitlin Clark is getting, you're probably right. Because these women have been playing their hearts out, balling out in the WNBA for years, and nobody's paid attention. Nobody's really cared. All of a sudden, here comes Caitlin Clark, which, I'm sorry, I've watched Caitlin Clark's game. I'm not saying she's not talented, but all she does is shoot threes, bro. She will take 18 shots in a game. 15 of them will be threes, and she'll only make one of her twos. Maybe it's a layup. I mean, if you like that kind of thing, people are calling her the Steph Curry, but like Steph Curry has game outside of shooting threes. Steph Curry is an amazing ball handler. He can get to the basket and score over and on anyone. And I'm not saying Caitlin Clark doesn't distribute. She does. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I watch her games from beginning to end. I'll tune in. I'll watch a quarter or two. I'll watch highlights. I have not sat down and watched a WNBA game this season from beginning to end. But there's definitely been more interest on my part in the WNBA. And I think there's been more interest for a lot of people in the WNBA. But all I'm saying is I think it's really hypocritical for people to be saying that she should just automatically be on the women's Olympic team because she's the most popular WNBA player. There's no way in the world you believe she's the best WNBA player in the league right now. If you do, you're crazy. I told you guys, she wasn't even the best college player of all time. I know she scored the most points, but once again, like, this chick's a chucker, bro. Like, she shoots a lot of threes, and don't get me wrong, she can hit them. She's very skilled at it, but I told you guys who my all-time female players are, and my number one WNBA player and female basketball player of all time is, and Cynthia Cooper. I don't think Caitlin Clark is on that level yet. Will she be in the future? I hope so. I've told you guys, I want the WNBA to succeed because I want the Comets to come back. So I just think we need to let her go through what most rookies go through, get beat up, get rooked, as they call it, and just shut your mouth, ball out, and earn your respect. And for the most part, I think that's what she's doing. She keeps getting asked a lot of questions about the fouls, about the so-called disrespect. So she's answering those questions. But I think if you ask Caitlin Clark one-on-one away from the cameras, like, is this what you expected? She'd probably tell you yes. And if she's a true competitor, bring it on. That's what she's going to say. And that's what I think she should do. Don't whine about it. Just get out there, ball out, and earn your respect the way everybody else has. And that's all I have to say about that. I mean, I think if we want that, we got to... I want us to treat our female athletes with the same scrutiny and expectation that we treat our male athletes with. And LeBron James, one of the reasons a lot of people hate him is they feel like he didn't earn the shine he got. So have that same energy when it comes to Caitlin Clark. I know she was a great college player, and I know she's brought a lot of attention to this sport. This entire rookie class has. It's not just Caitlin Clark on her own, though. So I think if you're a true fan of sport, competitiveness, you want to see her earn that respect, and she's got plenty of time to be on the Olympic team. The Olympic team's going to win with or without her. Women's basketball worldwide is nowhere near as close as the men's game worldwide is to the U.S. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if the U.S. is the best men's national team in the world right now. That's another conversation for another day. But I just wanted to talk about that because that was a fairly big talking point in the sports landscape. Another thing, the Lakers got ditched by Dan Hurley. He wants to go back to UConn, which he should. This is what Lakers fans need to realize. Being on the Lakers as a player and coaching the Lakers is not the dream job that it once was. Everybody's not clamoring to come to LA the way they once were. And the world we live in now with the internet, you don't have to live in Los Angeles or New York to be a star. You can be a star anywhere. And as somebody who lived in LA, if I'm a family man, I don't want to be anywhere near there. If I'm a young single person, yeah, go to LA, party, ball out, go to all the events, be in all the commercials, be on TV shows. But there's better places in the country where you can be on a better team, a better culture and environment. And I don't mean historically. Historically, the Lakers have had a great culture. But ever since Dr. Buss has passed away, it's been kind of a shit show over there, man. So there's plenty of places that stars, coaches could want to go. I mean, we got Ime Udoka over here in Houston. He was a pretty hot commodity. Do you think Ime Udoka, if he waited one more year, would have taken the Lakers job? Here's the problem if you take the Lakers job. If you take a Lakers job and you don't win a championship, you're probably getting fired. You got like 2 years to win a chip. And if you don't, then you're getting fired. Who wants to deal with that? Nobody wants to deal with that. Come to Houston where our expectations are much, much lower. No, that's messed up. Anyway, guys, but all in all, even though the sports landscape is slow, NBA Finals are tomorrow. I still say if you're a Houston sports fan, you should be rooting for Boston to get it done. Let's finish this thing out. Let's sweep them. I believe that Kristaps Porzingis might be injured, so I don't know if he's playing in the next game. I got to do some research on that. But I told you guys, just number one, it's Dallas, and we're Houston, so we should be rooting against Dallas, period. But I believe that the Boston Celtics are the blueprint for the Houston Rockets and what they're trying to do over there at Toyota Center. So we should want to see them hoist up that Larry O'Brien because that'll give us hope that we can hoist up the Larry O'Brien. So all in all, despite the Astros being stuck in purgatory, despite the fact that we're clamoring for football, but we're just not going to get it for another couple of months, and despite the fact that the Houston Rockets are not playing, there is optimism, there is hope in both the Texans organization and the Rockets organization. And I'll tell you what, if there's any team that has proven they can get themselves out of a difficult spot, it's the Houston Astros. And for that reason, I say the State of the Union in Houston is very, very strong. Once again, before I get out of here, I want to remind you of the ways you can support the show. One, you have been doing this entire time. Thank you guys so much. If you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, if you're on any of the platforms that I'm streaming to, thank you so much for taking your time this evening to turn in. We had a great turnout, great interview with Lachard Binkley. I want to thank him again for coming on the show, being my special guest. Continue to watch, guys. Continue to share. Let's grow this thing together. Hopefully, I'll be sitting in the press row with Lachard one of these days, and I'll be able to give you guys the inside scoop on these teams. If you'd like to leave me a tip, there's the QR code for my link, for my tip jar right there, or there's a link in the description for my tip jar. If you guys leave a donation of $50 or more, I'll send you a Houston Sports State of the Union podcast t-shirt. Remember to please screenshot that you sent me that because it doesn't have your name on it. It's anonymous when you send it. But if you screenshot it and send it to my DMs, you can direct message me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or any of the social media platforms. My link tree is also in the description. Make sure you guys let me know if you send me that donation, and I'll send you a t-shirt. Remember, there's also affiliate links for Houston sports fan gear and for podcast equipment. And if you're interested in me representing your business through sponsorship, I would love to hear from you. Please email me at Houston's HSSTUpod@gmail.com. All right. I promised my boy. Is he still there? Chris Rivers, you still there? When we do the live show next week, man, I want you to call in, or maybe you can come in virtually. Is there anybody there who is interested in earning a t-shirt really quick? I'll ask you one Houston sports trivia question. Let's give them 10 seconds. Going once. Going twice. Alrighty. That's going to do it, man. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. My wife just chimed in. She said, good show. Dear, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I hope you all enjoyed it. My next week's show is going to be on Tuesday. We will say 6:30, 7:30. I'll make sure to announce it in plenty of time so you guys can show up. Once again, thank you so much to everybody who came into the show today. In the meantime, before next week, I want you guys to stay 10 toes down for H-Town. I love you. We'll see you next week.
This has been the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast, hosted by Nick Stevenson. Tune in next week for more news and analysis of your favorite Houston teams. Please follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, the app, formerly known as Twitter, if that's even really still a thing. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.